very, very sad day. Rather, I will call it as a black day in Indian football. It's the biggest body of sports in sports. And they are banning our association, which is really a shameful thing.
Just like a heartbreaking influence by the players and some teams, clubs. Our India facing mainly on a corruption, like a corruption method. We have to change the corruption method, and yes, I think FIFA had taken a good decision towards IFF.
This ban has exposed so many. India is not going to host under 17 Women's World Cup as of now. The thing is 0-0 for India.
Very unfortunate that FIFA has banned Indian football, but at the same time I think it's a great opportunity to get our system right. And it's very important that all the stakeholders to come together, get the system right, and everybody work for betterment of Indian football.
Thanks a lot for staying with us here at CNN News 18. You're watching the biggest exclusive. I'm Ridhima Bhatnagar. In what is being seen as a big embarrassment and setback to the All India Football Federation, FIFA, the apex football body, today announced that it has decided to suspend the AIFF with immediate effect. Now, the decision was taken unanimously by the Bureau of FIFA Council. The decision has been taken due to undue influence from third parties, which constitutes a serious violation as far as FIFA is concerned. Now, the body also said that the suspension will be lifted once an order to set up a committee of administrators to assume the powers of the AIFF Executive Committee has been repealed and the AIFF administration regains full control of the AIFF's daily affairs. FIFA is also addressing the next steps with regard to the tournament and will refer the matter to the Bureau of Council if and when necessary. Now, remember, the spectre of a FIFA ban had been hanging over AIFF since 18 May when the Supreme Court forced out Praful Patel as the AIFF president for not holding elections due in December 2020 and appointed a 3-member committee of administrators headed by former top court judge A.R. Dave to manage the organization's affairs. So the big question at this point is what has actually led as far as this suspension is concerned, and more importantly, what does this then mean as far as the future of various players and even the AIFF is concerned? Let's break down those details. First, let's really talk to you about if everybody is saying that this was expected, why was this really expected, and what is this rot that seems to be running deep? Now, as I pointed out, the biggest concern as far as FIFA is that there is an undue influence as far as third party is concerned. This is because of the Supreme Court appointed committee of administrators, as we pointed out, who they see have an unfair influence as a third party. There is no national team matches, team tagged as sleeping giants. This seems to be a big issue. FIFA world ranking globally, India only at 104. Now, excessive centralization, state units have no say. This really has been one of the reasons ailing AIFF. All leagues now stand officially unrecognized. AIFF executive not in control, third party pulled in, as I pointed out. All of this started after Praful Patel stepped down and then there were no elections and it was left headless. No new president for 13 years. Praful Patel completed 3 terms, ineligible to stand again. Why were there no elections after him? Elections have been now pending for as many as 18 months. Even the AIFF budgets have been slashed 84% this year. The allocation only stands at 5 crores. But this is what has led to the suspension. The more important question as of now is, what about the future? What are the consequences as far as this suspension is concerned? It is a global embarrassment. The first in 85 years, this is going to be a big setback as far as India is concerned, which also means that India can't host the Under-17 Women's World Cup, which is just 3 months away. But many also now pointing out that because there are a lot of global precedents as well, if the ban is lifted, then possibly this can take place. It also means for the players, they can't play junior or senior international games. Club teams also barred from continental events. Remember, the men's team was supposed to play in Singapore and Vietnam next month. That also has a lot of shadow over it now. cancelled matches. We're going to put out those details. Mohun Bagan's AFC match on September 7 because of the suspension that stands cancelled. Also, what is now out of the picture is Gokulam Kerala's FC from AFC Women's Club event that also now stands cancelled. Again, the women's team from SAIFF Championship, that is also out of the picture. Any domestic tourneys not recognized by AFC or FIFA, all of that has been ruled out as far as this suspension is concerned. The larger question now is this just a setback or is there actually an opportunity as far as India is concerned? Let me also now bring in our guests who've taken out the time to take this discussion forward. Anirban Datta, Secretary, Indian Football Association; Alvito, former Indian football player; Samindra Kuntli, football journalist; and Durga Boro, also an Indian footballer. Good to have all of you on the broadcast with us. Anirban, let me begin with you because this is the consensus among a lot of experts today that this was a sword that was hanging for a really long time. This was expected. How do you see the suspension? Are you really surprised?
I think it's a black letter there for Indian football. If we don't act immediately to get things in order and the house in order and get the FIFA ban lifted, I think the Indian football will get lost in oblivion. The FIFA has told us many a times to follow a certain roadmap that has been advised by FIFA before for the election and everything, and we have been I think we have been digressing from that, and FIFA is not taking it lightly. FIFA is very serious about it. So unless we do that, we are going to lose a lot, and Indian football is going to go back to a very dark place. All the development activities that we have done till now will get lost, and I see a very dark future if the FIFA ban doesn't goes away. The thing is, the moment we get under a FIFA ban, we won't be able to have any of the foreign players.
True.
The development activities that are supported by FIFA will be withdrawn. The coaching licenses that we do, the way we develop our coaches, that will be stopped. And the Under-17 Women's World Cup, which is a very big thing that was supposed to happen in India, will be withdrawn. Apart from that, one of our biggest club, that is Mohun Bagan Club, is supposed to play in the AFC Cup. That team will also not be able to participate in AFC Cup if the FIFA ban is not lifted. So my request would be to the Supreme Court and to everyone that please sort it out. FIFA never accepts any third-party intervention in the administration of football. So it has to be in a way that AIFF functions by itself and conducts the election by itself. Then only the FIFA ban can be lifted. Otherwise, it is not going to go. And they have proven it. It's not an empty threat.
It's not an empty threat. Are you saying this is a black tea as far as India is concerned? Alvito, do you agree with what Anirban is saying? That if this was expected, we knew what the rules say, third-party influence is taken very seriously as far as FIFA is concerned, then why did we even have the CEO which was appointed by the Supreme Court, and why were there no elections? How are you seeing this suspension? Are you seeing this as temporary, or do you think this could have larger ramifications?
Yeah, it's a very sad day for all of us. As a football fan, we knew it was coming, but then, it's a very sad day. It shouldn't have happened. Whoever the people are responsible for, they should be extra cautious. And, we were always seeing that there was a progress in the national team, and then suddenly for the next 2 years, if the ban cannot be lifted and if it remains, so it's going to be very bad for the Indian football, and a lot of footballers, the promising footballers who are really making a good mark, in the national team. So it would be a big setback for them.
It will be a big setback for them, and this will also bring down the morale as far as these young players are concerned, especially of those in the Under-17 Women's World Cup team that was preparing because it's just about 3 months away. But Samindra, I want to break this down point by point for our viewers. As I pointed out when I started the show, one of the biggest friction points as far as FIFA was concerned was the constitution by the Supreme Court of the Committee of Administrators. If the FIFA is so clear as far as a third-party influence is concerned, why was this even constituted by the Supreme Court?
Yeah, I think there are two ways to look at this. FIFA rules are very clear, and at the same time, they are not very clear. In general, FIFA brings in third-party suspension. Look at Kenya, for example, when one of their own is in trouble. So you wonder what the role of Praful Patel is in this charade, I think we may say, because he overstayed in 2020. And why did he overstay? Because amendments needed to be done to the constitution, but that whole process had a feeling of an airy nothing. So you wonder, why has FIFA suddenly slapped India with this third part interference? Obviously, there has been a lot of mismanagement at the AIF under Praful Patel. Development has been very slow. Youth development has been neglected. The relationship with the ISL and IMG alliance is also not very healthy. So there are a lot of problems, and there were a lot of problems under the management of Patel. But I think that third-party interference is a very fluid concept in FIFA's point of view. And I was talking to a FIFA source today, and he said what most of us suspect is that in general, FIFA don't really care about football development in India or in the subcontinent until an authority steps in, and this authority was the Supreme Committee. And I do think that in a reasonable society, the Supreme Committee has the power to try and clean up a sports governing body. But obviously FIFA have stepped in here. So you can look at it in two ways, and I think it's good that Patel has been sidelined and that this process is happening, because perhaps
I'll talk about what really happened after Praful Patel's removal and those 18 months. Why didn't we really see any election? But I want to bring in Durga as well in the conversation. Durga, आपको एक प्लेयर की तरह से आज कैसा लग रहा है? कितना बड़ा सेटबैक है प्लेयर्स के लिए, टीम के लिए जो इतनी मेहनत करते हैं सारे दिन?
पहला आपका CNN 18 को मैं नमस्कार, और आलबिदु भाई, आपको बहुत दिन के बाद मैं देखा हूँ, अच्छा लग रहा है देख के आपको। और ये बोलना चाहता हूँ, मैं प्लेयर का, मैं फुट प्लेयर हूँ, बहुत थोड़ा सा खेल के आया हूँ, फिर भी हम लोग को इतना दुख लगता है आज हम लोग को फीफा ने बैन किया है बोल के सुन के। ये बात है, अभी इंडिया में कितना वो पॉपुलेशन है, इसका हिसाब से हम लोग बहुत इम्प्रूव करना चाहिए फुटबॉल में। कुछ सिस्टम का वजह से हम लोग इतना डेवलप नहीं हो रहा है, अभी वो सिस्टम मतलब हम लोग चेंज करना है, वही बोलना है मेरे को।
Anirban, if you heard what the players are saying, most of them are saying that these were the murmurs that were already taking place for a while. As we pointed out, it was all looking well, but the problem started as far as Praful Patel's removal was concerned. Those 18 months were extremely crucial. Why were there no elections?
Well, the elections they are planning is most welcome, and the changes in the constitution that is being planned is also welcome. We have to adapt to the sports code, but it cannot be done under government or court intervention. The COA, even for COA, the FIFA was very specific. They have come to India, they have sat down with us, I mean AIFF, and they have given a guideline that is to be followed. But we have been flouting that guideline, and FIFA is very serious now. They have already put a ban on India. I don't think it can be sorted out unless we understand what FIFA wants and act accordingly.
So Alvito, taking on from what Anirban is saying, he's saying there is a deeper rot that's still running in the system. There are guidelines that are being flouted. Which are these guidelines which have been flouted, which has led to the suspension?
See, the people who are there in the administrative, I think they should have been extra cautious. Like, things were not really in a proper position. I don't want to point out anybody particularly, but then it's, they should have been, everybody should have had their roles properly. If what I mean to say is a pilot cannot be a footballer or a footballer cannot be a pilot, right? So there should be the right people at the right positions. And I think that is what was lacking. And overall, this is what the Indian football is suffering today.
No, so Alvito, just elaborate on what you're saying. I know you're being extremely diplomatic and choosing your words very carefully, but what were these specific warnings that were given by FIFA to AIFF, which in your regard were completely ignored or flouted?
See, one is very clear that they had informed that, the third party should not be involved. And, maybe there are certain things as I see, if you want to play a football match, there are a lot of criteria you need to fulfill. So those are the criteria even the national team maybe knew about it. What are the things that they need to put in place? So if you want to play a I-League or an ISL, so there are a lot of things you need to fulfill. And I think this is one of the things which AIFF maybe failed to, keep the things in place, to follow the FIFA guidelines simply and conduct election as per agreed timelines. This is what I think they have failed to, do the things at the right time.
दुर्गा, आप जब इस कॉन्वर्सेशन को सुनते हैं आपको कैसा लगता है कि AIFF के पास काफी वार्निंग्स थी, काफी समय भी था, बट पूरी गाइडलाइंस को फ्लाउट करा गया, जो रेड फ्लैग्स थे उनको भी इग्नोर करा गया। अब आगे के सारे टूर्नामेंट्स पे भी एक क्वेश्चन मार्क लग गया है। पहले तो जो अंडर 17 का वर्ल्ड कप है 3 महीने में, वही हमें पता नहीं कि भारत में होगा या नहीं। उसके आगे जाकर मेंस टीम अगले महीने सिंगापुर और वियतनाम जाने वाली थी। कितने मोरल पे इम्पैक्ट होता है प्लेयर का जब ऐसी न्यूज आती है, और कितना मेंटली इम्पैक्ट होता है एक प्लेयर?
इतना दुख की बात है हम लोग का इंडियन फुटबॉल के लिए। मेरे को भी कभी कभी शर्म लगता है प्लेयर बोलने के लिए। अभी देखिए, हम लोग AFC कप के लिए भी क्वालिफाई ऑलरेडी कर लिया। अगर हम लोग ऐसा सस्पेंड होएगा तो हम लोग कैसा फुटबॉल डेवलप करेगा? तो हम लोग बहुत सालों से ये चल रहा है। हम लोग का असम में भी इतना वो चलता है, हम लोग का पॉलिटिक्स चलता है इधर में। हम लोग कितना दुख के बाद है। हम लोग मार्च महीना में हम लोग ग्राउंड का वजह से हम लोग रास्ता पे निकलना पड़ा। हम लोग प्लेयर एसोसिएशन लोग निकलना पड़ा रास्ता पे ग्राउंड के लिए। इतना दुख की बात है। अभी वर्ल्ड कप भी हम लोग का ज्यादा दिन ही नहीं, 1 महीना 2 महीना बाकी है। पर वो भी खेल नहीं पाएगा तो हम लोग का फ्यूचर क्या होगा यंग जनरेशन का? हम लोग बहुत पीछे चला जाएगा अगर ये 1 साल में हम लोग अगर सस्पेंड हो जाएगा तो।
आप बोल रहे हैं कि बहुत पीछे चले जाएंगे। काफी क्रूशियल है क्योंकि एक प्लेयर का पर्सपेक्टिव ही इस स्टोरी को सही तरीके से बता सकता है। अगर आप बोल रहे हैं अगर ये सस्पेंशन जिस तरीके से है अगर स्टे करता है तो बहुत पीछे इंडिया चली जाएगी। आपकी किस तरह की कम्युनिकेशन रही है प्लेयर्स की और आपकी एसोसिएशन के साथ?
ये तो पहले से चल रहा है, प्लेयर्स और एसोसिएशन के साथ बहुत पहले से चल रहा है। ये हम लोग कम्युनिकेशन ठीक नहीं है। हम लोग बहुत वो कर रहा है, मतलब असम में भी हम लोग ट्राई कर रहे हैं वो सिस्टम चेंज करने के लिए। लेकिन जब हर डिस्ट्रिक्ट में भी ये लोग का इन्वॉल्व है, थर्ड पार्टी बोलता है। थर्ड पार्टी कहाँ से आ गया? ये लोग स्पोर्ट्स के बारे में, फुटबॉल ठीक है, हम लोग वो नहीं बोल रहा है, हम लोग नहीं सही है। लेकिन हम लोग प्लेयर लोग को जो फुटबॉल का बारे में आता है उसको देना चाहिए, उसको काम करने के लिए देना चाहिए। ठीक है, फाइनेंस के लिए हम लोग प्रॉब्लम होता है, फिर भी वो लोग हम लोग को सपोर्ट करना चाहिए। लेकिन हम लोग को जो फुटबॉल का बारे में पता है उसको चांस देना चाहिए काम करने के लिए। ऐसा होने से हम लोग को प्लेयर लोग को भी ये लोग इतना वो करता है, डोमिनेट करके रखता है। हम लोग फ्री माइंड से हम लोग बात कर नहीं सकता है एसोसिएशन में जाके। अगर हम लोग भी डिस्कस करना, अगर कुछ एडवाइस चाहिए तो हम लोग भी थोड़ा सा तो हम लोग दे सकता है। लेकिन वो भी बात करने के लिए हम लोग इतना डर लगता है।
जी, काफी क्रूशियल है जो आप बोल रहे हो कि प्लेयर्स को एक फ्रीडम ही नहीं है कुछ बोलने की, और ये काफी समय से इश्यूज चलते आ रहे हैं। अनिर्बान, I want to bring you back in and listen to what the players are saying, and this is painful to hear, right? Because they're the ones who are putting all the hard work, they're the ones who are turning up to practice and bringing these laurels for the country, and they just don't have any freedom because of this over-influence as far as these third parties are concerned. As I said when I started the show, the problem began. A lot of big questions are being raised of what happened post the removal of Praful Patel. There are also questions being raised as far as his involvement even post his removal. Is this now become a part hustle? Do you think that's where the issue is?
Well, I'll not be able to comment much on that because he is not a president anymore at the moment, and the entire committee and the entire office bearers, the panel of office bearers has been dissolved. So his involvement as a third party is, I don't know how his involvement is in question. He is there, of course, and he is, but right now the administration is managed by COA.
Okay.
It's not Praful Patel managing the show.
Okay. I like how all the guests are being extremely guarded in the words and the statements that they're choosing as well. But let me try and frame it differently than for you, Alvito. Amid all this conversation about the involvement of Praful Patel, even post his removal, why did the elections not happen in those 18 months? Why the delay? That's the crucial question.
See, I don't really know. I mean, that is what I mean to say. I don't want to particularly mention anybody's name, but then this is what I'm going to keep saying. See, as a footballer, I'm very sad today that because we were keen in watching the matches and the team was really playing well. Recently, we have also qualified for the Asia Cup, and we had high hopes on the team doing well in the coming matches as well. And then suddenly we see maybe the Indian national team will nowhere play a part for the next two years until and unless the Supreme Courts, they come out with a positive in favor of the Indian national team. So, I don't know if it's Praful Patel or if any other person has played a role there, but then whoever are involved in it, I think they should try and, resolve the problem as quickly as possible and see the best interest of the team.
Okay, the best interest of the team. What is that can be done now to ensure that possibly the suspension can be lifted and then India can host that under-17 World Cup as well? But Anirban, you heard what the players on the panel also are saying. You heard from Durgo as well that there is no freedom as far as the players is concerned. This is a rot that's been running for really long. What about the players? Why is that not being seen as the priority amid this part tussle?
It is a huge setback. Can you imagine? It is a dream of a player. Anyone who has ever played football, it is even beyond their dreams to play in the World Cup, and this was the biggest opportunity for them. Just because of this issue with the Supreme Court and COA and these things, that opportunity is being taken away from us. India playing in World Cup, the women team, under-17 women's team representing India in World Cup is a huge achievement for Indian football. It is a big feather in our cap, but we are going to lose that because of this ban.
दुर्गा, क्या आपको लगता है कि अभी भी समय है चीजों को सही करने के लिए, या आपको लगता है डैमेज इतना हो चुका है कि अब कुछ सही नहीं हो पाएगा?
हो सकता है अभी हम लोग डिसीजन लेना पड़ेगा जल्दी, अगर सब करके मतलब डिसीजन लेने से अच्छा है जल्दी, नहीं तो हम लोग का हाथ से चला जाएगा सब कुछ, नहीं तो बाद में हम लोग बैकअप करने के लिए बहुत टाइम लगेगा.
दुर्गा, मैं आपसे ये भी पूछना चाहती हूँ कि कुछ ग्लोबल एग्जाम्पल्स भी हैं नाइजीरिया के साथ या पाकिस्तान के साथ, क्या उससे कुछ होप मिलती है कि आगे जाके उन लेसन्स पे हमारी टीम को सीखना चाहिए?
जी, बहुत सीखना चाहिए. हम लोग यूरोप कंट्री को भी फॉलो करना चाहिए. बहुत हम लोग दूसरा को देख के सीख सकता है, हम लोग डेवलप भी कर सकता है दूसरा को देख के.
Alvito, as I said when I started the show, do you think all is lost or do you still think there is an opportunity? This is what we've heard from legends and former players as well, that don't see this as an embarrassment, don't see this as a roadblock, but see this as the opportunity that we wanted to do this much needed cleanup.
See, I think he would be the right person to tell you why the elections has not taken place. Because even if there is a club which is formed, there should be meetings happening between the coach, the team, and the same goes with the administrative. I mean, a national team with the Praful Patel, who is the president, and not having meetings and not, this is something which I don't understand why. I mean, he was there, they were there almost, I think, 12 years, if I'm not wrong. So they were there for the 12 years and not a single time they have taken meeting. And all they have done is, for the betterment of the national team, but then that is what has really affected us.
Okay. Lastly, I also want to understand, Alvito, have you been able to speak to some of the players who were preparing for this World Cup? What is the sentiment that they're working with today?
No, frankly speaking, I haven't spoken to anyone because, I was traveling and then I came back to Calcutta early morning. In fact, late night when I had a flight from Dubai. So one of the journalists messaged me and he said, India is banned from national team, from all the matches. And I was in a big shock, although I knew there was a meeting on the 15th or 16th, and we knew that it was coming, but I was confident that it might also not come, but there might be some, time limit given for us to sort out the things and to put the things in place. But then it was like a big shock for me. And frankly speaking, I haven't been able to talk to anyone. But maybe, as these situations are once
True.
the time moves on, you come across a lot of people, and then that's when we all the ex-footballers, we keep talking. And now the time is, we need to talk, we need to see if anything betterment for the national team. I, as a player, and maybe some of the senior most players, we would always love to give our advice and to do something good for the national team.
Well, that's the perfect note to actually end this conversation of how we all can come together to ensure that India can come out as far as the suspension is concerned. I'd like to thank all our guests who took out the time to join us this evening. We're also now getting some breaking developments coming in. The Delhi High Court has passed a landmark judgment with regard to sports bodies and following of National Sports Code. The High Court has said they can't be permanent posts like life president, says tenure of each EC is fixed and nobody can contemplate a permanent position in any organization which discharges public functions and receives government funds and even recognition. So that's the word that's coming in from the Delhi High Court. Our legal correspondent and my colleague Ananya Bhatnagar joining us on the broadcast. Give us the fine print of what we've heard from the Delhi High Court.
Well, this judgment was basically cited in terms of, in fact, this landmark judgment is over a petition filed by Rahul Mehra, who's a lawyer and also a sports activist. So it was concerning the membership of the Indian Olympic Association and how the sports, in fact, go on in the country. And now what directions that have been passed by in fact, the Delhi High Court are that the High Court has appointed a committee of administrators to manage the affairs of the Indian Olympic Association, which basically deals with all of the Olympic sports in the country. It has also said that all NSFs, including the IOA, has to comply with the sports code, and in case they fail to do so, their representation should be stopped. And in fact, no funding shall also be given out to them. Apart from that, it has passed certain observations with regards to the constitution of the IAF and the elections being held. The committee of administrators, remember, is headed by Justice Anil Ardave, former judge of the Supreme Court, and apart from two other members, former election commissioner S.Y. Qureshi and Vikas Swaroop. And in fact, three sports persons have also been appointed as the consultant sports persons into this particular case, including Mr. Abhinav Bindra, Anju Bobby George, and Bombaila Devi Lakshiram. So these are some the committee members who have been appointed. Apart from that, various observations the High Court has also made that all the sports federations shall comply with the sports code and the law of the land. And in fact, those who would fail to do so would in fact lose their memberships, and also no funding would be granted to them. And one very important point that has also been raised is that the IOA's recognition shall be suspended if it does not comply with the sports code. So these are clear warnings to the Indian Olympic Association to comply with the sports code, and all of those NSFs, including the IOA, who comply with the sports code and represent Olympic sports would qualify for the IOA membership itself.
Okay,
so
Ananya, Ananya, thanks a lot for getting us all those details. We really have to see how this plays out even with the Supreme Court tomorrow. It's a wrap from my side. Plain Speak is up next.